The moon hung over the forest like an open wound in the sky, spilling pale light between the ancient trees. The night wind whispered old secrets through the leaves, carrying the scent of damp moss, sap, and something darker, imminent death. Elara walked through the woods with silent steps, her bare feet knowing every root and stone of the path. She didn't belong here, not really. The villagers feared her as much as they needed her, keeping her at the margins as one keeps fire, necessary but dangerous. Her fingers brushed the herbs in her worn leather pouch when she heard it. A low moan, almost imperceptible, coming from the ravine to the left. It wasn't human. Her heart raced, but her feet were already moving before fear could catch up. Between the twisted roots of a black oak, she found him. A wolf pup, no larger than a young dog, trembling violently. The silver fur was stained with dark blood, and an open wound on his flank exhaled black smoke that rose in poisonous spirals. Elara knelt, feeling the cold earth against her knees. She knew that smoke. Nightshade poison mixed with something unnatural, something that burned not just flesh, but the very essence of life. The pup stared at her with golden eyes, bright with fever and terror, but also recognition, as if he'd known her for millennia. "I know," she whispered, extending her trembling hands. "I know it hurts." There was no time for potions or herbs. The poison already spread through the small wolf's veins, darkening the arteries beneath the thin skin. There was only one way, the forbidden way, the one that had cost her place among humans. Elara positioned her palms over the smoking wound and closed her eyes, invoking the gift that ran in her blood like an underground river. The pain was instant and absolute. She felt the poison serpent from inside the pup into her own hands, burning her skin like living coals. Black smoke began rising from her fingers, and she bit her lip until she tasted blood to keep from screaming. Tears ran down her face as she absorbed each toxic particle, pulling it into herself. Her skin turned red, then purple, veins marking themselves dark against pale flesh. The pup moaned lower, his breathing gradually stabilizing. Elara didn't stop. She couldn't. She continued extracting the poison until the last spiral of black smoke rose from her own hands and dissolved into the night air. When she finally pulled away, her palms were covered in burns that looked like black roots beneath the skin, pulsing with phantom pain. But slowly, miraculously, the flesh began to heal, first from burning red to inflamed pink, then to normal ivory tone. The pup breathed deeply now, the wound on his flank already beginning to close. He licked her trembling hands with animal gratitude, and Elara felt something strange, a connection, tenuous as silk thread, but undeniable. She didn't know she was being watched. In the shadows, hidden by the darkness of the trees, a man watched. Not completely man, something older, wilder. His eyes glowed golden like the pup's, and when he breathed deeply, the air around him seemed to vibrate with contained power. He had seen everything. Seen the human kneel without hesitation, seen her endure the agony of lethal poison that would kill anyone else in minutes, seen her choose pain instead of letting his son die. Kael, king of the Shadow Pack, felt something inside him break and rebuild simultaneously, a visceral recognition that echoed in his bones and blood. Centuries he had waited, centuries he had wandered between wolves and men, carrying the burden of leadership alone, feeling the emptiness where there should be a presence. And now, in this clearing lit only by the bleeding moon, he found her, his Luna, his destined mate. The Shadow King, the meeting and recognition. Elara was still stroking the pup when she felt the change in the air, a massive, suffocating presence that made every survival instinct in her body scream to run. But she remained motionless, frozen not by fear, but by something more primitive, recognition. He emerged from the shadows, as if made from them. Tall, muscular, with black hair falling to his shoulders and golden eyes that captured the moonlight, and returned it in liquid flames. He wore dark clothes that seemed part of the night, and every movement carried predatory grace. But it was his aura that hit her like a wave, ancient power, wild, indomitable. "You saved my son," he said, and his voice was deep, husky, laden with an accent she couldn't identify. It wasn't a question. Elara stood slowly, her legs shaky. Her hands still throbbed with the memory of poison. "He was dying. You absorbed nightshade poison mixed with wolfsbane and silver essence." Kael took a step forward, and the pup immediately ran to him, rubbing against his legs. "That would kill any human in minutes, burn their organs from the inside out." "I'm not any human," she replied, lifting her chin with defiance she didn't feel. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, not anger, but intense interest. He moved closer, and Elara forced herself not to back away. She could feel the heat radiating from him, smell of forest after rain, rich earth, and something musky that made her head spin. "No," he agreed softly, stopping less than a meter from her. "You're not." His eyes traveled over her, not with lust, but with a different kind of hunger, as if reading secrets written on her skin. "You're a blood healer, ancient blood. I thought your lineage was extinct." Elara swallowed hard. "Almost is. I'm the last one I know. And yet you use your gift to save forest creatures." There was something strange in his voice, admiration mixed with something deeper, more possessive. "Without expecting anything in return." "What are you?" she asked, though she already knew. Wolves didn't grow that size. Men didn't have eyes that glowed like golden embers. Kael Shadowborn, king of the Shadow Pack. He inclined his head slightly, a movement that was simultaneously courtesy and warning. "And you just saved my heir, my only son." The air left her lungs. Stories she'd heard in childhood flooded her mind, tales of werewolves who ruled the deep forests, of alphas who lived centuries, of packs that answered only to the strongest, and of the Shadow King, the oldest, the most powerful, about whom the elders whispered with a mixture of reverence and terror. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I just couldn't let him die." "I know." Kael extended his hand, and Elara watched fascinated as he gently took one of her hands in his. His palm was rough, calloused, but his touch surprisingly delicate. He turned her hand, studying the marks the poison had left, pink lines that looked like roots beneath the skin. "You endured agony to save someone you didn't even know. Put your life at risk without hesitation." His thumb brushed her wrist, and Elara felt something shocking, a pulse of energy, hot and electric, that ran from where he touched her directly to her heart. Her eyes widened. "You feel it," he murmured, more to himself. "Of course you do." "Feel what?" Her voice came out trembling. Kael raised his eyes to hers, and what Elara saw there made her step back, raw intensity, fierce possessiveness, and something that looked suspiciously like reverence. "The bond," he said simply. "The recognition that transcends logic or choice. You are my destined mate, Elara Bloodhealer, my Luna." The world tilted beneath her feet. "That's impossible. I'm human. You're much more than that." He didn't release her. "And fate doesn't care about impossibilities." Section 3. The Mark of Destiny, the marking and its consequences. Before Elara could process his words, before she could argue or flee or do any of the 1,000 things her mind screamed at her to do, the forest around them exploded into movement. Wolves emerged from the shadows, not ordinary animals, but massive creatures with fur ranging from silver to deep black, all with eyes that glowed with supernatural intelligence. Dozens of them forming a circle around the clearing. Elara froze, every muscle tense, but the wolves didn't attack her. Instead, they lowered their heads in reverence to the man at her side, a low chorus of growls and yips, forming something that sounded absurdly like a greeting. "My pack," Kael explained, still holding her hand. "They felt when I found you. They came to witness." "Witness what?" Elara asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "You're claiming," He turned to face her completely, and there was solemnity in his expression that wasn't there before. Elara, understand, among my kind, when an alpha finds his destined mate, he must mark her. It's more than tradition. It's ancient law, written in our blood and bones. Without the mark, the bond remains incomplete, vulnerable. And if I refuse? She forced the words out, even as every fiber of her being sang with his presence, pulling her closer. Pain crossed his face. Then we both suffer. The bond already began forming the moment you touched my son, when you absorbed the poison in his place. To deny it now would be to deny part of our own souls. Elara looked at the wolves around them, at the pup now sleeping at Kael's feet, at the man, the king, who stared at her with a mixture of hope and despair so human it broke her heart. She thought of her life in the village, of the people who feared her, of the loneliness that consumed her like slow fire. She thought of how, for the first time in years, she felt seen, understood. "How does it work?" she asked quietly. "The marking." Relief flooded his eyes. "I need to bite you. Here." He touched the side of her neck, just above her shoulder, and even that phantom touch sent shivers down her spine. "My essence will mingle with your blood, creating a bond my pack will recognize. You'll become Luna, queen, protector, second only to me." Will it hurt? Foolish question, she knew. She who had endured poison capable of killing werewolves. Yes, he was honest, but not like the poison. It will be a burn that transforms, not destroys, and when it passes, you'll carry my mark. You'll belong to this pack, and it to you. Belong. The word echoed in her, awakening a hunger she'd buried so long ago. She looked at the forest, at the moon now beginning its descent toward the horizon, at the new day approaching. She could return to her lonely home, continue her existence at the margins, or she could take a step toward the unknown, the impossible. "Do it," she whispered. Kael didn't move immediately. "Are you sure? Once marked, there's no going back. You'll feel what I feel, know my thoughts in moments of intensity, and I'll know yours. We'll be bound until death separates us, and perhaps not even then." Elara met his eyes. "I'm sure." He pulled her closer with surprising gentleness for someone so clearly predator. One hand slid to the nape of her neck, fingers threading through her hair, while the other remained at her waist, stabilizing her. She could feel the tension in his body, the iron control he maintained over his nature. "Look at them," he murmured against her hair. "Look at your pack." Elara obeyed. The wolves watched her with expectation, golden and silver eyes fixed on her. And suddenly she understood. This wasn't just about her and Kael. It was about all of them. A pack without Luna was incomplete, unbalanced. She wouldn't just be his mate, but mother, healer, spiritual guide to every wolf present. "I'm ready," she said. Kael tilted his head, his lips brushing her temple in a caress before descending to her neck. His breath was hot against her skin, and Elara felt his canines elongate, become sharper. Then he bit. The pain was white lightning through every nerve. Elara screamed, her fingers digging into his shoulders as she felt his teeth pierce flesh and find something deeper. Her very essence, the core of her existence. But along with the pain came something else, golden heat that spread from where he bit like liquid fire, coursing through her veins, wrapping around her heart, infiltrating every cell. She felt Kael, not just his physical presence, but his mind, his feelings. Centuries of solitude, of leadership that weighed like mountains, of endless searching. And now, relief so profound it almost drowned her, fierce joy, protective possessiveness that promised to destroy anyone who dared hurt her. When he finally pulled away, licking the wound to seal it, Elara was trembling. Blood trickled down her neck, but it was already stopping, the bite already beginning to heal in a specific pattern. His mark, a symbol that would declare to the world she belonged to the Shadow King. The wolves howled in unison, a sound that echoed through the forest and beyond, announcing the birth of a new Luna, And Elara, still in Kael's arms, felt something inside her expand, strengthen. She was no longer just a solitary healer. She was Luna, she was queen, she was home. Between two worlds, internal conflict and first challenge, dawn found Elara in the heart of pack territory, a place humans called the Deep Hollow, ancestral forest where trees grew so dense that sunlight barely touched the ground. Kael had brought her to what he called home, a magnificent structure carved into a moss-covered hill, half cave, half construction, with ancient stone columns and tapestries telling stories of centuries. She touched the mark on her neck, feeling the raised lines beneath her fingers. It still hurt, a constant burn that reminded her of the choice she'd made. Through the newly formed bond, she could feel Kael somewhere nearby, concern, pride, and something warmer that made her face heat. "You should be resting," came his voice from the entrance. He carried a tray with fruit, roasted meat, and bread still warm. "Marking drains energy." "I'm fine." A lie. She was exhausted, every muscle ached, and her head spun with the novelty of feeling another presence constantly in her mind. But she also felt strangely alive, connected to the forest around her in a way she'd never experienced. Kael placed the tray on a stone table and approached with that predatory grace she now recognized as part of his nature. "You don't need to be strong with me, Elara. Never with me." The words broke something in her. Tears threatened to overflow, and she turned away, hiding her face. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted, voice breaking. "Yesterday I was just a rejected healer. Today I'm queen of werewolves. How does any of this make sense?" He wrapped around her from behind, his heat immediately comforting. "It doesn't, but fate rarely does. You think I planned this? That I chose to fall for a human who absorbs poison with her bare hands? You don't love me." She said it with more firmness than she felt. "You barely know me." "I know your soul," he corrected, turning her to face him. His golden eyes were intense but kind. "Through the bond, I feel your essence, your compassion that surpasses self-preservation, your quiet strength that endured years of loneliness without breaking, your light even when the world treated you like darkness." He touched her face, thumb tracing her cheek. "That's not immediate love, no, but it's recognition. And love will grow if you let me." Before Elara could respond, a low growl echoed from the entrance. A grey she-wolf entered, larger than any natural wolf, with a scar crossing one eye. She transformed fluidly, bones cracking, fur giving way to human skin, until a woman in her 40s stood where the she-wolf had been. She wore leather clothes and stared at Elara with open distrust. "Mara," Kael said, tension entering his voice, "you should have knocked." "Your Luna needs to meet the pack," Mara responded, ignoring him. Her eyes pierced Elara. "Needs to prove herself. She already proved herself by saving my son. She proved she has a healing gift. Not that she has strength to lead." Mara crossed her arms. "The pack is restless, Kael. You mark a human as Luna without consulting the elders, without tests, without proper ritual. They question." Elara felt Kael's anger through the bond, hot and dangerous. "I am king, and I'm just the messenger," Mara cut in, but there was warning in her voice. "But they demand circle of trial, today at sunset." Heavy silence fell. Kael looked ready to explode, but Elara placed a hand on his chest, feeling his heart beating furiously. "What is circle of trial?" she asked. Mara smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Ancient test. The Luna aspirant must enter the circle alone and face 3 challenges chosen by the pack: strength, wisdom, and sacrifice. If she fails any—" She left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. "Then I won't fail," Elara said, more confident than she felt. "You don't understand," Kael began. "I understand that your pack doubts me. I understand I need to prove my worth." She looked at Mara. "I accept. I'll be at the circle at sunset." Mara studied her for a long moment before nodding and transforming again, disappearing into the forest. When they were alone, Kael turned her to face him, hands firm on her shoulders. You don't know what you're getting into. Circle of Trial is brutal. Werewolves trained since birth have failed. Then I'll have to be stronger. She covered his hands with hers. Kael, I don't run, not when there's something worth fighting for. And this, she touched the mark on her neck, this is worth it. The Pack's Trial, the 3 challenges. The circle was formed by ancient stones covered in runes that pulsed with faint light, delimiting an arena about 20 meters across. The entire pack was gathered, easily 100 werewolves in human and lupine forms, forming a dense ring around it. The full moon rose on the horizon, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. Elara stood in the center, wearing simple clothes Kael had insisted on, resistant but flexible fabric. He was outside the circle, jaw clenched, hands fisted. Through the bond, she felt his anguish, his desire to stop everything and protect her. But she also felt his respect, his belief in her. 3 elders emerged from the circle, werewolves whose human forms carried the weight of centuries. The first was Thorn, a tall man with white hair and eyes like steel. He raised his hand, and silence fell. Elara, blood healer, lunar aspirant of the Shadow Pack, his voice thundered. You face the Circle of Trial. 3 challenges will test your worth. Fail and you'll be banished. Succeed and you'll be recognized. He paused. The first challenge, strength. The runes glowed brighter, and from the ground emerged 3 werewolves in hybrid form. Muscular bodies, half human, half wolves, with lethal claws and fangs. Warriors. They circled her, growling. Elara had no weapons, no combat training, but she had something else. Years of survival, of healing wounds that taught intimate anatomy, and a gift few understood. When the first attacked, she didn't try to fight. Instead, she touched his extended arm and pulled. Not poison this time, but something more essential, vital energy, the force that animated muscles. The warrior staggered, confusion in his eyes as his legs weakened. Elara rolled aside when the second attacked, her hands finding the warrior's legs. Again she pulled, redirecting his strength into herself. She felt muscles burn with borrowed power. The third hesitated. Learning, he attacked with claws extended, too fast to dodge. Elara did the only thing she could, touched his claws directly. The pain was intense as they tore her skin, but she was already pulling, draining his strength through blood-to-blood contact. The warrior fell, unconscious. Elara stood in the center, bleeding but victorious. Her breathing was heavy, and through the bond she felt Kael's wild pride, but there was no time to rest. Second challenge, announced the second elder, a copper-haired woman named Lyra. Wisdom. The runes changed color, becoming blue. 3 figures appeared, not werewolves, but forest spirits, translucent entities taking forms of spectral wolves. They didn't attack. Instead, they spoke in unison, voices echoing from nowhere and everywhere. A pup is born weak, destined to die. The pack has limited resources. Do you abandon it to save the strong, or waste resources you cannot spare? A moral dilemma. Elara thought of her own past, of how she'd been treated as a burden. She thought of the pup she'd saved, Kael's heir that some would have left to die. No life is waste, she said firmly. The weak pup may carry gifts the strong don't possess, may bring perspective, compassion, innovation. And even if it doesn't, a pack's strength isn't measured only in muscle, but in character. A pack that abandons the weak teaches its members that love is conditional, loyalty temporary. That's true weakness. The spirits were silent for a moment that seemed eternal. Then they bowed their heads and faded. Murmurs ran through the pack, some approving, others skeptical. Final challenge, said the third elder, Garrick, whose scar ran across his entire face. Sacrifice. The runes turned red as blood, and then Elara saw. In the center of the circle appeared an illusion, but one so real her heart stopped. Kael, chained, bleeding from multiple wounds, surrounded by enemies, and beside him the pack, pups, elders, wounded. The choice was clear. Save the king, her destined mate, or save the pack. Elara felt tears burn her eyes. Through the bond, she felt Kael's own anguish watching, knowing what choice she faced. She looked at the illusion of his face, at the golden eyes she loved, and then at the fragile pups behind him. "I save the pack," she whispered, voice breaking. "Always the pack, because that's what a Luna does. That's what a leader does. Kael would teach me that. He'd give his own life for any member of it. I can't honor him less than he'd honor himself." The illusion faded. Absolute silence fell over the circle. And then, one by one, the werewolves began to howl, not in challenge, but in recognition. Thorn entered the circle, followed by Lyra and Garrick. "You passed," Thorn said simply. "Welcome, Luna of Shadows." The runes exploded in golden light. The true sacrifice, external threat, and definitive choice. The celebration had barely begun when the scream tore through the night. Elara felt through the bond before she saw terror, pain, death approaching. The entire pack tensed, heads turning toward the northern forest. Kael was beside her in an instant, transformation already beginning to course through his body. "Hunters," he growled, the word half human, half animal snarl. "Many, with silver and wolfsbane." Elara remembered the pup's wounds, the specific poison. "They're hunting you systematically." For months. Mara appeared already in hybrid form. "We've lost 6 members. They know our patterns, our weaknesses. Someone guides them. A traitor." The word wasn't spoken, but hung in the air. Kael looked at his pack, and Elara saw the pain in him, the idea that one of his own could betray them. But there was no time for investigations. "Protect the pups," Kael ordered. "Mara, Thorn, lead the western defense. Lyra, evacuate the elders to the deep caves. Garrick, I'm coming with you," Elara interrupted. "No!" He faced her, eyes already more wolf than human. "You barely passed the trial, you're wounded. I'm a blood healer, Kael. I can save the wounded, neutralize poisons." She gripped his arm, feeling tense muscles beneath her fingers. "You need me there." He was going to argue, she saw in his eyes. But another scream echoed, followed by sounds of battle, growls, roars, and human shouts. The decision was made. Kael nodded briefly and bolted toward the combat, Elara running behind him. The scene they found was carnage. Hunters, perhaps 40 men wearing leather armor reinforced with silver, attacked the northern flank. They had crossbows with silver arrows, swords bathed in wolfsbane, and military training showing lethal coordination. Werewolves were falling, screaming when silver burned their flesh, when poison spread through their veins. Elara didn't think. She ran to the first wounded, a young she-wolf with a silver arrow embedded in her shoulder. The she-wolf howled in pain, the silver burning like acid. Elara grabbed the arrow, ignoring the burn on her own hands, and pulled. It came out with a spurt of poison-black blood. Immediately she placed her palms over the wound and pulled, absorbing the poison exactly as she'd done with the pup. The pain was different this time, amplified. This poison was more potent, designed to kill, not just incapacitate. She felt it burn through her arms, climbing toward her heart. But she didn't stop. She pulled until the last toxic particle was in her, until the she-wolf's wound began to heal. "Thank you, Luna," the she-wolf whispered before standing and returning to battle. Elara moved to the next, and the next, and the next. Each poison absorbed, weakened her more. Each wound healed, drained more of her strength. Her skin turned pale, then grey. Blood trickled from her nose, her ears. But she didn't stop. Kael fought like a force of nature, full transformation now, massive black wolf the size of a horse, jaws crushing armor, claws tearing through shields. But even he was slowing. There were too many hunters, too well-equipped. That's when Elara saw him. At the edge of the battle, a man in a dark cloak watched. He didn't fight, just watched with a satisfied smile. And she recognized the medallion around his neck, symbol of an ancient order, monster hunters who believed they were purifying the world. But more than that, she recognized his face. She'd seen sketches in Kael's messages, in warnings the pack had shared. Marcus Ironhand, the leader, the man orchestrating the werewolf genocide, and he was looking directly at her. "The new Luna," he called, voice carrying over the chaos. "Blood healer joining beasts. What a waste." He raised his hand, and 10 of his best warriors separated from the battle, forming a line. "Bring her to me, alive!" Elara had no chance to run. The warriors surrounded her, crossbows aimed. She could feel Kael's fury through the bond, feel when he turned toward her, but he was too far away, engaged with his own hunters. One of the warriors advanced, silver chain extended. Elara raised her hands instinctively, not to attack, but to heal. She didn't know if it would work, if her gift could affect humans, but when her palms glowed with golden light, when she touched the warrior, she felt it. Life. Vital force, not just wounds or poisons, but the very essence of being. And she pulled. The warrior fell, not dead, but deeply unconscious. The others hesitated, fear flashing in their eyes. Elara felt the gift burning through her now, uncontrolled. She'd absorbed too much poison, healed too many wounded. She was overflowing with energy that wasn't hers, power that needed to be released or it would destroy her. So she let go. The release was like a silent explosion. Golden light radiated from her in a wave, washing over the battlefield. Where it touched werewolves, it healed. Wounds closing, poisons being expelled, strength returning. Where it touched hunters, it weakened. Weapons falling from numb hands, legs buckling, consciousness fleeing. Marcus Ironhand watched his force crumble in seconds. He looked at Elara with a mixture of horror and fascination before turning and fleeing into the darkness, his remaining warriors following. Elara fell to her knees, completely exhausted. The world spun, her vision darkening at the edges. She felt strong arms catch her, familiar scent of forest and musk that was Kael. He'd returned to human form, holding her against his chest. "You're incredible," he whispered, voice hoarse with emotion. "Terrible and incredible." They'll come back," she managed to say. "I know, but today you saved my pack." He kissed her forehead, her temple, her hair. "You saved all of us." Around them, the pack gathered, wounded but alive, defeated but victorious, and every eye was fixed on Elara with absolute reverence. This was their Luna, their savior, their queen, the complete transformation, acceptance and change. 3 days passed since the battle. 3 days Elara had been unconscious, body fighting to recover from what she'd done. Kael hadn't left her side, holding her hand, whispering through the bond to keep her anchored. The entire pack had kept vigil, bringing offerings, herbs for strength, fresh meat, small tokens showing she was accepted. When she finally woke, afternoon sun filtered through the curtains of her chamber. Kael was there, as she knew he would be, eyes closed but expression tense, even in sleep. She squeezed his hand and he woke instantly. "Elara." The relief in his voice was palpable. "You're starving," she interrupted, trying to smile. Even that hurt. He laughed, a sound of pure joy that sent warmth through her chest. "I'll get food. Don't move." But when he stood, she held him back. "Kael, wait. I need to ask you something." He sat again, concern returning to his face. "What is it? Why didn't you tell me that using my gift like that could kill me?" The words came out harsher than intended. "You knew, didn't you, that absorbing so much poison, healing so many at once, would destroy me from the inside out?" He looked away, guilt written in every line of his face. "I knew, but I also knew I couldn't stop you. You're a blood healer, Elara. That need to heal, to save, is in your essence. Trying to stop you would be like trying to stop a river from flowing. You could have warned me, and would you have done differently?" He faced her, golden eyes intense. "Would you have let my pack die to protect yourself?" Elara closed her eyes. No, she wouldn't have. He knew it, and she knew it. "It's frustrating when you're right. Get used to it." There was a touch of humor in his voice now. "I've been king for 2 centuries. Sometimes I accumulate wisdom." She opened her eyes and studied him. really looked for the first time since waking. He looked exhausted, lines of worry around his eyes that weren't there before, jaw covered with stubble. And through the bond, she felt the depth of his anguish, how many times he'd thought he'd lose her. "Kael," she whispered, pulling him closer. "I'm fine. I'm here." He sank against her, forehead resting against hers. "When I saw you fall, when I felt you disappear from the bond for those 3 days, I thought I'd lost you before I really had you. You have me." The words came out before she could process them. "I don't know when it happened, between the bite and the trial and the battle, but you have me." He pulled back enough to look in her eyes, and what she saw there took her breath away. Love, pure, intense, undeniable. "And you have me, every part of me, for all eternity." The kiss was inevitable. It started gentle, almost hesitant, but deepened when Elara threaded her fingers into his hair, pulling him closer. He tasted of forest and fire, promise and danger, and she lost herself in him with an abandon she'd never known she possessed. When they finally separated, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "You need to recover. Food, rest, healing." "I need you," she corrected, "but food would also be good." He laughed again, that sound she already loved, and went to get her something to eat. While alone, Elara touched the mark on her neck, feeling how it had changed. The raised lines now carried constant warmth, a pulse of energy connecting her to Kael, and more faintly, to every pack member. She was no longer fully human. She knew that. Something had changed in her when she'd released all that energy, when she'd absorbed so much poison and power. She could feel the wolves through the forest, their feelings, their needs. She could sense the forest itself in ways she'd never felt. Every tree, every creature, all connected in a vast network of life. It was frightening. It was exhilarating. It was destiny. Mara appeared at the entrance, knocking lightly before entering. She carried a tray with steaming stew and bread. "Luna," she said, and this time the word carried no doubt. "The pack asks for you. When can you receive them?" "Now," Elara decided, forcing herself to sit despite the weakness. "I'm their Luna. I won't make them wait." Mara smiled, the first time Elara had seen her smile. "You're exactly what we needed, even if I couldn't see it at first." In the following days, Elara learned what it really meant to be Luna. It wasn't just a title. It was a responsibility that consumed every moment. The wounded came to her, and she healed them, more careful now, not pulling too much at once. The pups sought her out, seeking comfort and play, and she found herself telling stories of the stars. The elders consulted her about decisions, and she discovered she possessed wisdom she'd never known. And Kael was always there beside her, sometimes guiding, sometimes just supporting. Their relationship deepened in ways that went beyond the physical. They worked in sync, anticipating each other's needs, finishing sentences, sharing looks that spoke volumes. One night, as they stood atop the hill watching the moon rise, Kael turned to her. "You feel different," he said. "Through the bond, stronger, more werewolf." Elara nodded. She'd felt it too. "I think absorbing so much from you, being constantly connected to the pack, it's changing me." "Does it scare you?" She considered. "No. Should it? Some humans who bond with us lose themselves, become more wolf than person. But I'm not just human, remember? I'm a blood healer. Maybe this is my gift's evolution. Not just healing, but adapting, transforming." He pulled her into his arms. "Whether you're human, werewolf, or something entirely new, you're my Luna. That will never change. Promise? With every beat of my heart." The Luna's dawn, resolution, and new beginning. The final confrontation came with the new moon, the darkest night of the month, when werewolves were weakest. Marcus Ironhand had chosen his revenge carefully. His hunters returned, not in a group of 40, but in an army of 200. They surrounded the pack territory completely, cutting off all escape routes. But he didn't count on one thing. Elara had grown in power. In the weeks since the first battle, She'd absorbed not just poisons and wounds, but the very essence of what it meant to be werewolf. And in the process, she'd discovered something extraordinary. She could lend her power to others. As the pack prepared for desperate defense, Elara stood in the center of their great cavern, surrounded by the elders. "I need to try something," she said, "something that's never been done." Kael held her hand. "What do you need?" "Every pack member needs to touch another in a circle, and I'll stand in the center." She looked at the worried faces. "I'll act as a conduit, amplify everyone's strength, connect them more deeply than the pack bond normally allows. But there's risk." "We do it," Kael said firmly. "If there's a chance of survival, we take it." The pack gathered, wolves forming an interlaced circle, each touching two others. Elara stood in the center, Kael at her side. She extended her hands, touching the nearest wolf, and then let her gift flow. It started as a trickle, but quickly became a flood. Her vital energy, amplified by everything she'd absorbed, flowed through the entire pack. Each wolf felt their strength double, then triple. Old wounds healed, weak limbs became strong. The pack bond itself ignited like living fire, connecting every heart, every mind. When the hunters attacked, they didn't find a pack weakened by the new moon. They found a unified army moving as one organism. Each wolf knew where another was, what they'd do before doing it. The coordination was perfect. The battle was brief but brutal. The hunters, despite their numbers, couldn't compete with a pack fighting as one. Marcus Ironhand saw his force decimated in minutes and tried to flee again. This time, Elara stopped him. She simply extended her hand in his direction, and through the amplified bond with the pack, she felt where he was going. With a thought, she pulled, not his life, but his will to flee. Marcus fell to his knees, confusion on his face. Kael approached him in hybrid form, imposing and terrifying. "You've hunted my kind for years, killed innocents. Why?" Marcus looked up, defiance still in his eyes despite fear. "You're monsters. Abominations. The world would be better without you." "We're part of this world as much as you," Elara said, moving to stand beside Kael. "We protect the forest, maintain balance, while you kill out of hatred." "You're one of them now," Marcus spat. "Traitor to your species." "No." Elara crouched to be eye level with him. "I'm a bridge between species. Luna, not just of the Shadow Pack, but protector of every living being in this forest. Human or werewolf." Now she touched his forehead, and Marcus screamed as memories flooded his mind. Every wolf he'd killed, every orphaned pup, every destroyed life. But also the werewolves' memories, their families, their loves, their fears and hopes, their humanity. When she released him, he was crying. I didn't know. I thought they were just beasts." "Now you know better," Kael said. "Go. Tell the other hunters what you saw, and don't return." Marcus fled, a broken man carrying new knowledge that would haunt him forever. Around them, the surviving hunters scattered into the forest, running for their lives. Elara turned to her pack, wounded but alive, tired but victorious. Through the bond, she felt their relief, their gratitude, their love. This was her family now, her home. Kael transformed back to human form and pulled her into his arms. "You did it. You saved us all." "We did it," she corrected. "Together." He kissed her deeply, pouring everything he felt into that single contact. Love, gratitude, promise of forever. When they separated, the pack around them howled in celebration, sound echoing through the forest and beyond. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Elara stood with Kael overlooking their territory. Her mark pulsed with warmth, the bond singing between them and extending to every pack member. She was no longer the rejected healer, alone and feared. She was Luna. She was queen. She was exactly where she belonged. "What do we do now?" she asked. Kael smiled, that expression that made her heart skip. "Now we rebuild. We make our pack stronger. We show the world that werewolves and humans can coexist." He took her hand, threading their fingers together. "We live, Elara looked at the rising sun, at the forest stretching endlessly before them, at the future filled with infinite possibilities. "Yes," she whispered, "we live." And for the first time in her life, she knew what it meant to truly belong.